Good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Today on our agenda, we are hearing one bill, Assembly Bill 110, which relates to lobbyist registration, and we'll be holding a work session on Senate Joint Resolution 8 of the 2019 session. Additionally, we have a committee bill introduction. Madam Secretary, we do have a quorum present. I believe that all our members are present here at our virtual meeting. Before we begin our agenda, I want to briefly explain how our virtual meetings will work. I've explained it before, so I know it's repetitive for many members, but go over it one more time. Currently, our legislative building is closed to the public as a result of the pandemic. All committee meetings are being held virtually, meaning committee members, staff, and presenters will be participating either through Zoom or by telephone. As most of you are doing now, you may view committee meetings online through the legislature streaming service or on the legislature's YouTube channel. As in previous sessions, all committee-related information is available on the Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System, or NELIS, which is accessible from the legislature's website. For this session, the public has 3 ways to submit public opinion or testimony. Please note that each way is slightly different. Some of the testimony becomes part of the public record, and others are opinions shared for legislators' information. The 3 ways are: 1, providing testimony via telephone during committee meetings; 2, submitting written testimony; and 3, using the opinion poll application. Testimony via telephone during committee meetings. To testify on bills or provide public comment during this session, members of the public should register on the NELIS system and then call into the phone number provided. To register, you click on the Participate button under each meeting that you're interested in and fill out the requested information. After registering, you call the number provided at registration, and then you'll be placed in line to testify either in support, opposition, or neutral on the bill. Or you're also able to provide public comment after the bill hearings are done. Our broadcast and production services team will prompt you when it is your turn to speak. This is a first come, first serve option, and testimony may be limited. You can also send in written testimony. It can be emailed as a PDF file to the following email address: senloe@scn.state.nv.us. It can be sent via fax to the following fax number: 775-684-6500. Please include on your written testimony the bill number that you're writing about, a clear title, such as Testimony in Support of Assembly Bill 123, and your name, and if you're representing an organization. All of these submissions become public exhibits posted on the NELIS system for the public's consideration and become part of the public record. The legislature website opinion poll application has been used in prior sessions, but now it's more prominently displayed and located in more places than previously. It's available by clicking on the Submit Opinion button near the date of each meeting. Through this feature, you can provide comments or just indicate your position on a bill. The comments are only available to legislators and do not become part of the public record. For public comment, the committee will set aside a time at the end of today's meeting for people to call in. If you miss a meeting and want to know what happened, all committee meetings are recorded and posted on the legislature's website, usually by the next day. I know that was a lot of housekeeping information, but please don't hesitate to contact me or committee staff if you have any questions or need help. Committee members, today we have one committee BDR that needs introduction by our committee. BDR R-384 is a bill from the Legislative Committee on Senior Citizens, Veterans, and Adults with Special Needs. It expresses support for the creation of a retirement plan for members of the military. Hopefully all members received a copy of this BDR earlier today through email. Of course, we will hear more about the measure once the resolution is referred to committee and scheduled for a hearing. I want to remind members that a vote to introduce this bill draft request is not an indication or a commitment of support for the substance of the bill. We just need the committee's approval to get the resolution in process, assigned a bill number, and referred to a committee. I'd accept a motion for introduction on BDR 384 if any members would be inclined to make that motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Second.
And I have a second from the majority leader. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, and we do need a roll call vote. The secretary will take the roll call vote.
Senator Lang.
Yes.
Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Yes.
Senator Buck.
Yes.
Chair Orenshaw,
Yes. Thank you, members. We'll be seeing as a bill soon. Now, before we get to the hearing on Assembly Bill 110, we do have a work session on a measure we previously heard, Senate Joint Resolution 8 of the 2019 legislative session. We heard that bill this session on February 23rd. The measure proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to guarantee equal rights. Our committee policy analyst, Michael Stewart, will walk us through the work session document.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. For the record, Michael Stewart, committee policy analyst. As the chair noted, Senate Joint Resolution number 8 was heard on February 23rd. As you know, this is the second time around for this joint resolution, which proposes to amend the Constitution by adding a guarantee that equal rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by this state or any of its political subdivisions on the account of race, color, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, disability, ancestry, or national origin. And there are no amendments offered for this measure. And I just would note that if approved by this legislative session, the proposal would be submitted to the voters for a final approval or disapproval at the 2022 general election. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart. And I was really impressed by our majority leader's work on this measure. Proud to be a co-sponsor and to have supported this during the 2019 session. It received overwhelming support the last session in the Assembly and the Senate. Are there any comments or questions for members before I open it up for a motion? I see Senator Lang, Vice Chair Lang, and then Senator Sievers-Gansert. Vice Chair Lang.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to make the motion, so if you want to take comment and come back to me, I'm good with that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had some inquiries about making sure individuals have equality as far as religion is concerned. And so I wanted to get a clarification on the record whether an individual's rights to practice religion and their religious beliefs are also protected via this legislation, because religion's not mentioned, creed is mentioned, but not the term religion. So I wanted to ask legal about that.
Thank you, Senator Sievers-Gansert. And we do have our legislator, Mr. Fernley. Thank you for joining us today. I know that you're so busy down there, but thank you for being part of our committee.
You're welcome. Thank you. And as Senator Sievers-Gansert mentioned, the language of the bill does say equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the state or any of its political subdivisions on account of creed. The term creed means a system of religious belief or a set of beliefs or aims which guide someone's actions. Based on those definitions of the term creed, it is our opinion that the word creed does cover religious beliefs. But in addition to this provision, the Nevada Constitution in Article 1 also protects freedom of religion. So there is already a constitutional provision that prohibits unequal treatment based on religious beliefs. This particular resolution provides the same type of protections that are already included in Article 1 of the Nevada Constitution. And it's also important to note that religion and freedom of religion is protected by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernley. Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Fernley. And then one additional question. The process for this is, for a joint resolution like this, because it's a constitutional amendment, would you just go over that process as far as requiring a couple of votes to the legislative body, and then also that it would be put on the ballot?
Yes. Again, this is Brian Fernley, Legislative Counsel. So this joint resolution was approved by the legislature in the 2019 session. If it were approved by the legislature in the 2021 session, this session, it would be placed on the general election ballot in the 2022 general election and would become effective and part of the Constitution only if the voters approved the resolution by a majority.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fernley. Any additional questions, Senator Sievers answered, or other committee members for our legislative council? Senator Buck.
Mr. Chair, I'm fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Sievers answered. Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. The bill before us today, I guess I feel that it's redundant as it discusses equality and the granting of protections to multiple groups or of citizens within Nevada. And the constitutions of the United States and Nevada are explicit that people are equal with equal rights under the law. And so I feel that we already have documents in existence guaranteeing all people, meaning every person is already granted equal rights. So equality is currently granted within both of these constitutions. Those inalienable rights granted to us through their guidance applies to each one of us with no exceptions and no carve-outs. And so I believe in the rights of all people. I champion a society that can accept and understand changes needed and necessary as more and more humans emerge from the shadows of discrimination and look toward a time when all equal stakeholders in their towns, cities, and states where they live. I embrace that voices and the narratives behind those who have said enough is enough. They are equal, and I am equal with them. However, a bill that explicitly lists out specific groups of citizens is bound to miss some, and ultimately allows for the possibility of like a special classes of people. I just cannot in good conscience support a bill that has the potential to harm, exclude, or potentially forget a subgroup of people who were left off the list. And so due to my belief in our state and federal constitutions and the fact that I will not stand for any bill that may marginalize any potential group, I must vote no today because of any one group of people, but not because of any one group of people, but because we must stand for every person having equal rights, period. So the question I guess I have and I'm struggling with today is why do we need to change from comprehensive language of all people to list out subgroups, some of which you are leaving out of the bill?
Well, Senator Buck, I appreciate your thoughts and your concerns. And of course, you know, our chamber, the Senate in the 70s did vote to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, the federal Equal Rights Amendment for gender. And unfortunately, it didn't pass over in the other house, and it didn't pass in enough states to be ratified. So I feel like there's still a lot of work, in my opinion, that needs to be done, whether at the state level and at the federal level. But that I'll be supporting the measure. And unless there are any legal questions for Mr. Fernley, I think I'd accept a motion unless there are any specific legal questions you have. But other than that, we can have discussion after there's a motion and a second. All right, Vice Chair Lang.
Chair Orenshaw, after all these years, I'm proud to move SJR 8 out of Senate Leg Ops.
Thank you. I have a motion from Vice Chair Lang for due pass. And is there a second?
Chair, I'll second that.
Second from Majority Leader Cannizzaro. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any discussion. Secretary, if we could have a roll call vote.
Senator Lang,
Yes.
Senator Cannizzaro,
Yes.
Senator Sievers Gansert,
Yes.
Senator Buck,
No.
Chair Orenshaw,
Yes. Thank you, Madam Secretary. And I'd like to assign the floor statement for that bill to our Majority Leader. It did pass with one nay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee.
Thank you. And now I'd like to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 110. We are very lucky today. We have Speaker Frierson, Speaker of the Nevada Assembly, and we have Brenda Erdos, our Director of the Legislative Council Bureau, here to present Assembly Bill 110. And I just want to take a moment this is Women's History Month, and Ms. Erdos is our first female director of the Legislative Council Bureau, and what tremendous work you've been doing during this pandemic, keeping democracy going, keeping our representative form of government going, and making this all work during a crisis that I would say none of your male predecessors ever had to face anything comparing to this in any example. So certainly, I think we're very privileged to have our first female director in Nevada history of the Legislative Council Bureau here, making sure that this is working and presenting this bill. And thank you for everything you do, Ms. Erdos.
Thank you.
Not sure if the speaker would like to start or Ms. Erdos, but whoever would like to start, and thank you for bringing Assembly Bill 110.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Ornshaw and Madam Majority Leader, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jason Frierson, Assemblyman for District 8, Speaker of the Nevada State Assembly, and I am pleased to present to you Assembly Bill 110 today. I feel like Assembly Bill 110 is reflective of what we are seeing throughout the country and the need to adapt. It was, I think, exacerbated by COVID and the pandemic, but it's not just because of COVID and the pandemic. I think COVID revealed challenges that we have with respect to being able to monitor lobbying activity, but also increase transparency and accountability. What we don't want is for folks under existing law to be able to take legislators to dinner across the street, never enter the building, and therefore never have to register and report activities. And so this bill is not expanding who has to report and register as a lobbyist, other than acknowledging that our previous and our existing law requires that you enter the building. And we now know that we have virtual participation, but we also know that this is not going to be the end of virtual participation. As we move out of the pandemic, they're going to continue to be Zoom meetings and team meetings and virtual participation. And I think that the idea behind this bill was to increase accountability and transparency so that the public knew what was going on and who was trying to influence their policymakers. And this bill attempts to do that. And so I am going to allow Ms. Earls to walk through it. I discussed this with legal, and of course LCB is not able to advocate on behalf of policy, so it's my role to present at least the intent behind the bill. It does just that, in addition to incorporating both regular and special session activity, and again acknowledges a new normal and provides a way for us to increase transparency so that the public is able to see how their legislators are interacting with advocates. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if you would allow, I would ask that Director Erdos walk through the bill and answer questions as it pertains to the language of the bill.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Director Erdos.
Thank you. As the Speaker duly noted, NRS 218F 150 prohibits me from opposing or urging the passage of legislation, except as my duties require me to make recommendations to you. I don't plan to urge or oppose legislation today, but instead would like to explain the provisions of AB 110. We filed a document in the meeting materials for AB 110 that contains a chart that was produced by our legislative librarian, Teresa Wilt. We thought you might like to see what other states are doing with regard to registration and regulation of lobbyists. Moving to the bill, Section 2 of AB 110 amends NRS 218H080 to remove paragraph A of subsection 1. This is the subsection that has kept us from registering lobbyists this session because they're not coming in the building. Obviously, to essentially replace paragraph A in subsection 2 on page 3 of the bill, we've added paragraph H, and it limits the provisions of paragraph A of subsection 1 so that persons who confine their lobbying activities to communications directly with one or more members of the legislative branch and only on infrequent basis who do not otherwise engage in lobbying activities would be basically be our new definition of lobbyist. So the goal here was to limit the definition of lobbyist to the same persons who are currently covered by the definition before the amendment of made by this bill. In other words, before taking out paragraph A. That is, we were intending that this bill ensure that it does not increase the number of persons who are required to lobbyist to register as lobbyists, but truly does get us the same result as the current section would if people were in the building. Sections 2 and 2.7, 2.3 and 2.7 of the bill both simply clarify that lobbyists are still only required to register during a regular special session. That is, that they have lobbying activities during a regular special session is when they're required to lobby. We wanted to make that clear because any change in the definition might make people wonder about that. Section 3 is a transitory provision that only applies now after this bill, if it's adopted, to ensure a clean transition for the registration of lobbying. This session, if AB 110 is passed by the legislature and approved by the governor, it is effective upon passage and approval. And again, the intent is to get us to the same place as we would have been with this definition as it is, except for that we need to account for people not being in the building. So we believe that this is a good match and will produce the same result. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And Brian Fernley, Legislative Counsel, is also familiar with the provisions of this bill. So thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Director. Members, any questions? Senator Buck.
So, thank you, Chair Orenthal. I was just wondering what's the magic number of legislators that quantifies you for to be classified a lobbyist? Because you have many that reach out to several different legislators. What's the magic number?
I'm willing to give that a shot, and Mr. Fernley, if you can back me up, Jason Frierson for the record. I don't believe there is a magic number. I believe that the definition of lobbyist is in statute. Whether you advocate paid or unpaid on behalf of someone else, it could be one other person or entity that you advocate on behalf of. I think you are not required to lobbyist if you are not being paid and if you are advocating on behalf of yourself. But beyond that, I don't believe there is a number, but I don't believe that is any different than what the current state of affairs is, and I don't think that the bill is intended to change that part of the existing law.
Thank you, Speaker. Any additional questions, Senator Buck? I've got a question from the Majority Leader and then a question from Senator Sievers-Ganser. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Chair. And Speaker Frierson, it's always good to have you here in the Senate and to see you, even if it is on video. Wanted to thank you for bringing forward this bill and thank Ms. Erdos for her work on this and for walking us through some of the pieces of this. I think it's something that we definitely all need, given some of the adjustments that we've had to make to deal with COVID, and certainly want to make sure that when we are dealing as legislators with folks who are advocating for policies in this building, that we know who it is that we're dealing with. And so really appreciate the clarity that will come with this. I guess I wanted just to make sure that we are clear on this subsection H, which talks just about folks who confine their lobbying activities to communicating directly with members only on an infrequent or regular basis. I don't read that as an intent to say that if you are a lobbyist and would be considered a lobbyist, if you just confine your communication to, for example, either Speaker Frierson or Senator Sievers-Ganser, you're only talking to two people and you talk to them a couple times, that would still be considered lobbying. We would still want to make sure that they're registered if that's what they're doing, and that wasn't meant to I guess, encourage folks to just simply talk to fewer members or talk on a less weekly or daily basis in order to avoid registering.
Well, thank you, Majority Leader, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Majority Leader. And again, I don't want to put LCB in a position of having to advocate, but I think that language is a reflection of what the current interpretation is, the way that we treat it currently. And so the language, it's attempting to take into account the folks that happen to occasionally lobby but don't fall under the technical definition. But I think that there is language in there in the second half of the sentence that allows for the interpretation of, I think, exactly what you alluded to, and that is if you're trying to skirt it, but your activity is really what a lobbying activity would otherwise be in statute, that it would still be something that you would be required to register for. And I think this is a codification of what the existing practice is as well. But I would welcome any clarification from Ms. Erdos or Mr. Fernley.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and thank you, Speaker, for the answer. Please go directly to the senator. You don't have to go through the chair. And I think I had a question from Senator Sievers-Ganser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate this legislation being brought forward because we are in very unusual times. So I was looking at Section 3.2 that talks about the report. Include in the first report filed pursuant to 218H400 after the effective date of this act, a report concerning the person's lobbying activities during the period beginning on February 1st and ending on the effective date of this act. I'm not quite sure how individuals fill that out. I mean, are they supposed to log? Should they have kept a log of all the conversations they had, or not quite sure how that's going to work? So maybe you can add to that what the expectations are.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Sievers. Again, for the record, Jason Frierson. I don't know that we are as concerned about a conversation as we are about, and if, essentially, if you are being taken to dinner at Duke's and bought, having wine and steak, but that person never enters the building, then we're trying to capture that activity. The point of that section you referenced is simply to refer back to February 1st, the start of the session, which has been what lobbyists have to do anyway. And so this isn't a deviation from a traditional lobbyist activity, other than they haven't been allowed in the building to register yet. And so because they haven't been allowed in the building to register yet, and some may choose not to ever, this is intended to date back to February 1st. And I have yet to hear from a lobbyist who has not, for their own accounting purposes and reporting purposes, kept track of lobbying activity, and certainly the money that they have spent since the start of session.
Thank you. And just for clarification, so is 218H.500, is that the expense? That's the expense form that they fill out? Not because we don't necessarily have them report on interactions. It's a report on money spent. Is that correct?
Thank you, Senator Sievers-Ganser. This bill is not intended to increase the amount of information that they have to report. It intends to capture the activity that has been shifted outside of the bill. Mr. Fernley, if you wanted to provide any clarification, please feel free if I'm off on any of this.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Fernley.
Yes, thank you. This is Brian Fernley. 218H.400 is the section that requires a report of the expenditures by lobbyists. So that is what subsection 2 is doing, is it's requiring that first report of expenditures to include the expenditures going back to February 1st.
Thank you for that clarification. I was just looking that up, and I would agree that transparency is extremely important. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sievers-Ganser. Any additional questions, either for Speaker of the Assembly, Director of Legislative Council Bureau, or our Legislative Council, Mr. Fernley? Right. I don't see any other questions from the committee. I'd like to go to any additional testimony in support of the bill. So if there's anyone in the queue who's in support, I'd like to ask Broadcast and Production Services. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in support of Assembly Bill 110?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 110, please press *9 now to get your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 859. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. This is Janine Hansen, the State President of Nevada Families for Freedom. I was unable to participate in the first hearing, but we want to thank those that have provided for the amendment of this bill. We were particularly concerned about individual grassroots people who might, on occasion, contact the legislature with an email or a phone call, more than one legislator, possibly, that they would be considered lobbyists.
And I'm not hearing anything. Broadcast and Production Services, do you know if there might be anyone who wishes to speak in support of Assembly Bill 110?
Apologies, Chair. This is Broadcast. We're having just a small technical difficulty. We'll be back with you in just one moment while we're starting it out.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody, for their questions.
Mr. Chair, I had another question.
Senator Sievers-Gansert, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, in looking at the current statute, it really is only related to legislators, lieutenant governor-elect, governor, and governor-elect. I'm just wondering why it doesn't extend to all the constitutional offices, because they all end up interacting during legislative sessions.
Thank you. And whoever would care to speak to that point.
This is Jason Ryerson for the record. I can only, I have actually thought about that question, Senator Sievers-Gansert, and my only conclusion was that the governor signs bills, and so there's a direct legislative involvement, and Lieutenant Governor frequently also runs Senate floor. So there's a direct legislative involvement, but the other constitutional officers' jobs don't necessarily change throughout the year as it pertains to authority within the legislative process.
I think that's something we may want to consider, I don't know, now or in the future, because the various offices do have influence and advocate for certain bills during all of our legislative sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Sievers-Gansert. Any other questions, members? Then I think we'll just be at ease till broadcasting that there's the solution to the technical problem. And thank you, everyone, for your patience. Thanks for presenting the bill.
Mic check 1, 2.
Thank you for your patience, Chair. This is Broadcast. We are still working on the issue. We're close to a resolution now.
Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mic check.
Great. Thank you very much, Brew. Chair, this is broadcast. Go right ahead. Go right.
Thank you,
Sorry about that, Chair.
Yes, broadcast. Thank you for fixing that technical difficulty. Thanks everyone for their patience. Thank you to all the callers, everyone waiting to call in on public comment and support opposition neutral on the bill. Broadcast, is there anyone who would like to speak in support of Assembly Bill 110?
Yes, thank you, Chair. To testify in support on AB 110, please press star 9 now to get your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 859. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. This is Janine Hansen, the state president of Nevada Families for Freedom. I was not able to attend the first hearing on this, but I have been concerned from the beginning about how this might affect grassroots people who occasionally call or email the legislature. I am very appreciative of Section 2H, which has been added to the bill, that appears to protect people as grassroots individuals and citizens in Nevada who contact the legislature and who are not focused in their full activities on lobbying. So we feel that the problems we initially saw with this particular piece of legislation have been corrected in this section on 2H, and we thank all of those that were responsible for changing this legislation so that it would not cover individuals and citizens who only occasionally participate by emailing or calling the legislature. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hansen. Broadcast, is there anyone else in support who'd like to be heard?
Yes, caller with the last 3 digits, 319. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Committee. Melissa Clement, MELISSACLEMENT with Nevada Rights Life, in support of AB 110. I want to thank the sponsor, Mr. Frierson, for taking our concerns into mind and drafting an amendment that recognizes the grassroots citizen advocates from all issues and all sides who take the time to petition their state government. I am looking forward to a time, hopefully in the very near future, that the legislative building will once again be open to Nevada's citizens, students, and lobbyists. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Clement.
Chair, there are no more callers in support.
Thank you very much. Broadcast, can we go to opposition? Is there anyone in opposition of the bill who wants to be heard?
To testify in opposition, please press star 9 now to get your place in the queue. Chair, it appears no one is raising their hand.
Okay. All right, thank you, broadcast. And yeah, can we go to neutral? Anyone who is neutral on Assembly Bill 110 and wants to be heard?
To testify in the neutral position on AB 110, please press star 9 now to get your place in the queue. Chair, nobody is raising their hand.
Right. I'd like just to maybe wait one more minute because of the technical difficulties in case there's anybody else out there broadcast who wanted to be heard. So committee, if you'd indulge me, just one more minute. Broadcast, anyone else that you see? Or?
No changes, Chair.
Right. Well, thank you, Speaker, Director, and to Mr. Friendly, thank you for presenting the bill today. I'd like to bring it back to the committee, and I'd open it up for a motion. I think that it would be important to try to move this bill today. If that's the pleasure of the committee, would there be a motion to do pass?
Chair, I make a motion that we pass AB 110 out of committee with a due support.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lang. I have a motion from Vice Chair Lang. Do pass on Assembly Bill 110. Second?
And a second, Mr.
Second from Majority Leader Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Sievers-Gansert.
I'm going to support the motion, but I do think that we really should consider adding the constitutional officers. I have a list of the different the number of bills that can be proposed by the different offices, and it's anywhere from 3 to 20 bills that would be brought during session, and I'm not talking about special sessions, but during a regular session. And so they too have significant influence and are part of this process, but they happen to be, in, of course, constitutional officers, not a legislator, the governor or lieutenant governor, so they're not on the list. But so I'm going to support it, but I really think we should consider expanding the transparency around money spent for all those individuals as well. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the comment, and it certainly sounds meritorious. Maybe, not sure this is the right vehicle for it. Maybe there's another vehicle this session, but maybe it is. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, Madam Secretary, if I could ask for a roll call.
Senator Lang,
Yes.
Senator Canizaro,
Yes.
Senator Sievers-Gansert,
Yes.
Senator Buck,
Yes.
Chair Orenshaw,
Yes. Thank you, members. It looks like AB 110 passed unanimously, and I'll take the floor statement for that unless anyone else wants it. But if so, just let me know and I'll pass it on to you. But I'll take the floor statement for now. And I appreciate the speaker, the director, and Mr. Fernley for being here. I think all we have left right now is our last agenda item, public comment. And if we broadcast, I know we had some technical difficulties, so if we need to wait a little bit to make sure we don't miss anybody, I'm happy to wait.
To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to get your place in the queue. Once again, to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to get your place in the queue. Chair, the line is up and working. However, there is no public comment at this time.
Thank you. And I know I'm probably imposing on everybody's patience here, but if we could just maybe give it another minute, since we have the technical difficulties, make sure anybody wants to chime in, they can. And broadcast, I wonder if anybody's on the line that might want to make public comment.
To testify or to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to get your place in the queue. Chair, the public comment line is up and working. However, there is no public comment at this time.
Right. Well, again, I appreciate everyone's hard work today and their efforts. And if there was who wanted to speak, I'm getting a message that there is someone in the queue, but if broadcast's not seeing them, broadcast, could you check one more time? Because I'm getting an instant message that there is someone in the queue.
Yes, Chair, there is one in the queue. Caller 373, if you would like to provide public comment, you will have 2 minutes. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You may begin. Once again, caller with the last 3 digits, 373, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Bob Russo, and I just would like to take a few moments to express my opposition to SJR 8. The vagueness of the language in SJR 8 could open the door to laws that would uproot the freedom of many Americans, the unborn, and put young women at risk. It could be used to sanction taxpayer-funded abortions, as is the case in New Mexico, Connecticut, and other states under the guise that restricting abortion is a form of sexual discrimination. This amendment could also threaten religious freedom by forcing clergy and businesses to accommodate same-sex marriage, even if it is contrary to their religious beliefs and personal convictions. Promoting gender identity in the state constitution would authorize that men who identify as women be allowed to compete against biological women in sporting events. This will crush women's sports and subvert the chances for Nevada's young women to advance in their athletic field and receive scholarships to further both their athletic and scholastic goals. Moreover, this amendment would risk the safety and violate the privacy of young women by allowing biological males to use female lockers and restrooms. Is this something that you would approve of? Would you approve this for your own daughter? How does this promote equality for these young women? Lastly, SJR 8 would force physicians to violate their oath to do no harm by prescribing self-altering treatments, sex-altering treatments to young children struggling with gender identity. Treatments that could cause irreversible harm to our unborn children, to our children into adulthood. The potential for widespread damage to our youth, the unborn, and personal liberty is evident. So I ask you to please vote no on this damaging resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Broadcast, is there anyone else who wishes to make public comment?
Chair, there is no more public comment at this time.
Mr. Chair, I believe you're muted.
Okay, one more technical difficulty. Sorry about that. I had my own technical difficulty. Thanks, everyone, for your participation today. We'll be meeting Thursday at 3:30, and appreciate everyone's hard work today. We're adjourned.
Thank you.